Hello and welcome to Webinar Wednesday. And what we're going to discuss today is what is your why? So before we get started, just let everyone come into the room. Just go to the chat button and introduce where you're from and what your name is. So just to recap, we'll get going now in a couple of minutes. So you're very welcome to Webinar Wednesday, where we'll be discussing what is your why. So before we get started, to let everyone come into the room, just on the chat button, introduce yourself as to who you are and where you're from. And we get going now in a couple of moments. Welcome. We get started. Hello, we've got somebody from Boston. You're welcome, Boston. Come on, guys, don't be shy. Just one person from Boston. Everyone must be from Boston. Right, let's get going, guys. So let me just start up the slide presentation. And we'll get started with what is your why? So the agenda for today and what we're going to go through today is we're going to discuss what is your why, your business why, and then we're going to translate that why into the why for your client. We'll listen to the absolute guru and genius around this piece called Simon Sinek. And if you haven't seen him, don't worry, you're going to see him now in a couple of minutes. We're going to play his video that was on TED Talk. And we'll see in that his simple tool, which he calls the golden circle. And the golden circle is a great way to understand what your why is, what your how is, and then what your what is. We'll then discuss about creating your own story, because people associate with stories. So we'll go through some process around that and how having a passionate story is absolutely contagious and allows you to absolutely connect with current customers and current clients and possible customers and clients. And then, like we always like to do at 3XM, we'll actually try and take all the knowledge that we've learned from Simon, and we'll actually try and put together your why statement. Now, at the end of this process, you won't have your why statement because it takes time to create that. What you will have is you'll have a framework to go about doing that. So you see these people here in front of you. So we've got Apple computers, we've got Martin Luther King, and we've the Wright brothers. So what do all these three brands or people or companies have in common, do you think? Well, according to Simon Sinek, the absolute guru in this area, it is that they all had a why. And not only did they have a why, but they understood their why. And then when they communicated, they made sure that they communicated from that central why position. So let's listen to Simon. This video, if you've seen it before, it's still worth seeing it again, because you need to see this over and over and over again to actually get the real benefit from it. But let's start.
How do you explain when things don't go as we assume? Or better, how do you explain when others are able to achieve things that seem to defy all of the assumptions? For example, why is Apple so innovative? Year after year after year after year, they're more innovative than all their competition. And yet they're just a computer company. They're just like everyone else. They have the same access to the same talent, the same agencies, the same consultants, the same media. Then why is it that they seem to have something different? Why is it that Martin Luther King led the civil rights movement? He wasn't the only man who suffered in a pre-civil rights America, and he certainly wasn't the only great orator of the day. Why him? And why is it that the Wright brothers were able to figure out controlled powered manned flight when there were certainly other teams who were better qualified, better funded, and they didn't achieve powered manned flight, and the Wright brothers beat them to it? There's something else at play here. About 3.5 years ago, I made a discovery, and this discovery profoundly changed my view on how I thought the world worked, and it even profoundly changed the way in which I operate in it. As it turns out, There's a pattern. As it turns out, all the great and inspiring leaders and organizations in the world, whether it's Apple or Martin Luther King or the Wright brothers, they all think, act, and communicate the exact same way, and it's the complete opposite to everyone else. All I did was codify it. And it's probably the world's simplest idea. I call it the golden circle. Why, how, what? This little idea explains why some organizations and some leaders are able to inspire where others aren't. Let me define the terms really quickly. Every single person, every single organization on the planet knows what they do, 100%. Some know how they do it, whether you call it your differentiating value proposition or your proprietary process or your USP. But very, very few people or organizations know why they do what they do. And by why, I don't mean to make a profit. That's a result. It's always a result. By why, I mean what's your purpose? What's your cause? What's your belief? Why does your organization exist? Why do you get out of bed in the morning? And why should anyone care? Well, as a result, the way we think, the way we act, the way we communicate is from the outside in. It's obvious. We go from the clearest thing to the fuzziest thing. But the inspired leaders and the inspired organizations, regardless of their size, regardless of their industry, all think, act, and communicate from the inside out. Let me give you an example. I use Apple because they're easy to understand and everybody gets it. If Apple were like everyone else, a marketing message from them might sound like this. We make great computers. They're beautifully designed, simple to use, and user-friendly. Want to buy one? Meh. And that's how most of us communicate. That's how most marketing is done, that's how most sales is done, and that's how most of us communicate interpersonally. We say what we do, we say how we're different or how we better, and we expect some sort of behavior, a purchase, a vote, something like that. Here's our new law firm. We have the best lawyers with the biggest clients. We have, we always perform for our clients, do business with us. Here's our new car. It gets great gas mileage. It has, leather seats. Buy our car. But it's uninspiring. Here's how Apple actually communicates. Everything we do, we believe in challenging the status quo. We believe in thinking differently. The way we challenge the status quo is by making our products beautifully designed, simple to use, and user-friendly. We just happen to make great computers. Want to buy one? Totally different, right? You're ready to buy a computer from me. All I did was reverse the order of the information. What it proves to us is that people don't buy what you do, people buy why you do it. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. This explains why every single person in this room is perfectly comfortable buying a computer from Apple. But we're also perfectly comfortable buying an MP3 player from Apple, or a phone from Apple, or a DVR from Apple. But as I said before, Apple's just a computer company. There's nothing that distinguishes them structurally from any of their competitors. Their competitors are all equally qualified to make all of these products. In fact, they tried. A few years ago, Gateway came out with flat-screen TVs. They're eminently qualified to make flat-screen TVs. They've been making flat-screen monitors for years. Nobody bought one. And Dell came out with MP3 players and PDAs. And they make great quality products, and they can make perfectly well-designed products, and nobody bought one. In fact, talking about it now, we can't even imagine buying an MP3 player from Dell. Why would you buy an MP3 player from a computer company? But we do it every day. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. The goal is not to do business with everybody who needs what you have. The goal is to do business with people who believe what you believe. Here's the best part. None of what I'm telling you is my opinion. It's all grounded in the tenets of biology, not psychology, biology. If you look at a cross-section of the human brain, looking from the top down, what you see is the human brain is actually broken into three major components that correlate perfectly with the golden circle. Our newest brain, our Homo sapien brain, our neocortex, corresponds with the what level. The neocortex is responsible for all of our rational and analytical thought and language. The middle two sections make up our limbic brains, and our limbic brains are responsible for all of our feelings, like trust and loyalty. It's also responsible for all human behavior, all decision-making, and it has no capacity for language. In other words, when we communicate from the outside in, yes, people can understand vast amounts of complicated information like features and benefits and facts and figures. It just doesn't drive behavior. When we communicate from the inside out, we're talking directly to the part of the brain that controls behavior, and then we allow people to rationalize it with the tangible things we say and do. This is where gut decisions come from. You know, sometimes you can give somebody all the facts and your figures, and they say, I know what all the facts and details say, but it just doesn't feel right. Why would we use that verb? It doesn't feel right. Because the part of the brain that controls decision-making doesn't control language. And the best we can muster up is, I don't know, it just doesn't feel right. Or sometimes you say you're leading with your heart, or you're leading with your soul. Well, I hate to break it to you, those aren't other body parts controlling your behavior. It's all happening here in your limbic brain, the part of the brain that controls decision-making and not language. But if you don't know why you do what you do, and people respond to why you do what you do, then how will you ever get people to vote for you or buy something from you, or more importantly, be loyal and want to be a part of what it is that you do? Again, the goal is not just to sell people who need what you have. The goal is to sell to people who believe what you believe. The goal is not just to hire people who need a job. It's to hire people who believe what you believe. I always say that, you know, there's, if you hire people just because they can do a job, they'll work for your money. But if you hire people who believe what you believe, they work for you with blood and sweat and tears. And nowhere else is there a better example of this than with the Wright brothers. Most people don't know about Samuel Pierpont Langley. And back in the early 20th century, the pursuit of powered man flight was like the dot-com of the day. Everybody was trying it. And Samuel Pierpont Langley had what we assume to be the recipe for success. I mean, even now, you ask people, why did your product or why did your company fail? And people always give you the same permutation of the same three things. Undercapitalized, the wrong people, bad market conditions. It's always the same three things. So let's explore that. Samuel Pierpont Langley was given $50,000 by the War Department to figure out this flying machine. Money was no problem. He held a seat at Harvard and worked at the Smithsonian and was extremely well connected. He knew all the big minds of the day. He hired the best minds money could find, and the market conditions were fantastic. The New York Times followed him around everywhere, and everyone was rooting for Langley. And how come we've never heard of Samuel Pierpont Langley? A few hundred miles away in Dayton, Ohio, Orville and Wilbur Wright. They had none of what we consider to be the recipe for success. They had no money. They paid for their dream with the proceeds from their bicycle shop. Not a single person on the Wright brothers' team had a college education, not even Orville or Wilbur. And the New York Times followed them around nowhere. The difference was Orville and Wilbur were driven by a cause, by a purpose, by a belief. They believed that if they could figure out this flying machine, it'll change the course of the world. Samuel Pierpont Langley was different. He wanted to be rich, and he wanted to be famous. He was in pursuit of the result. He was in pursuit of the riches. And lo and behold, look what happened. The people who believed in the Wright brothers' dream worked with them with blood and sweat and tears. The others just worked for the paycheck. And they tell stories of how every time the Wright brothers went out, they would have to take 5 sets of parts because that's how many times they would crash before they came in for supper. And eventually, on December 17th, 1903, the Wright brothers took flight. And no one was there to even experience it. We found out about it a few days later. And further proof that Langley was motivated by the wrong thing, the day the Wright brothers took flight, he quit. He could have said, that's an amazing discovery, guys, and I will improve upon your technology. But he didn't. He wasn't first. He didn't get rich. He didn't get famous. So he quit. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And if you talk about what you believe, you will attract those who believe what you believe. Well, why is it important to attract those who believe what you believe? Something called the law of diffusion of innovation. And if you don't know the law, you definitely know the terminology. The first 2.5% of our population are our innovators. The next 13.5% of our population are our early adopters. The next 34% are your early majority, your late majority, and your laggards. The only reason these people buy touch-tone phones is because you can't buy rotary phones anymore. We all sit at various places at various times on the scale, but what the law of diffusion of innovation tells us is that if you want mass market success or mass market acceptance of an idea, you cannot have it until you achieve this tipping point between 15 and 18% market penetration, and then the system tips. And I love asking businesses, what's your conversion on new business? And they love to tell you, oh, it's about 10%, proudly. Well, you can trip over 10% of the customers. We all have about 10% who just get it. That's how we describe them, right? That's like that gut feeling, oh, they just get it. The problem is, how do you find the ones that just get it before you're doing business with them versus the ones who don't get it? So it's this here, this little gap, that you have to close, as Geoffrey Moore calls it, crossing the chasm. Because you see, the early majority will not try something until someone else has tried it first. And these guys, the innovators and the early adopters, they're comfortable making those gut decisions. They're more comfortable making those intuitive decisions that are driven by what they believe about the world and not just what product is available. These are the people who stood online for 6 hours to buy an iPhone when they first came out, when you could have just walked into the store the next week and bought one off the shelf. These are the people who spent $40,000 on flat-screen TVs when they first came out, even though the technology was substandard. And by the way, they didn't do it because the technology was so great. They did it for themselves. It's because they wanted to be first. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And what you do simply proves what you believe. In fact, people will do the things that prove what they believe. The reason that person bought the iPhone in the first 6 hours, or stood in line for 6 hours, was because of what they believed about the world and how they wanted everybody to see them. They were first. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. So let me give you a famous example, a famous failure and a famous success of the law of diffusion of innovation. First, the famous failure. It's a commercial example. As we said before a second ago, the recipe for success is money and the right people and the right marketing conditions, right? You should have success then. Look at TiVo. From the time TiVo came out about 8 or 9 years ago to this current day, they are the single highest quality product on the market. Hands down, there is no dispute. They were extremely well funded. Market conditions were fantastic. I mean, we use TiVo as a verb. I TiVo stuff on my piece of junk Time Warner DVR all the time. But TiVo is a commercial failure. They've never made money. And when they went IPO, their stock was at about $30 or $40 and then plummeted, and it's never traded above 10. In fact, I don't think it's even traded above 6, except for a couple of little spikes. Because you see, when TiVo launched their product, they told us all what they had. They said, we have a product that pauses live TV, skips commercials, rewinds live TV, and memorizes your viewing habits without you even asking. And the cynical majority said, we don't believe you, we don't need it, we don't like it, you're scaring us. What if they had said, if you're the kind of person who likes to have total control over every aspect of your life, boy, do we have a product for you. It pauses live TV, skips commercials, memorizes your viewing habits, etc., etc. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it, and what you do simply serves as the proof of what you believe. Now let me give you a successful example of the law of diffusion of innovation. In the summer of 1963, 250,000 people showed up on the Mall in Washington to hear Dr. King speak. They sent out no invitations, and there was no website to check the date. How do you do that? Well, Dr. King wasn't the only man in America who was a great orator. He wasn't the only man in America who suffered in a pre-civil rights America. In fact, some of his ideas were bad, but he had a gift. He didn't go around telling people what needed to change in America. He went around and told people what he believed. I believe, I believe, I believe, he told people. And people who believed what he believed took his cause and they made it their own, and they told people. And some of those people created structures to get the word out to even more people. And lo and behold, 250,000 people showed up on the right day, on the right time to hear him speak. How many of them showed up for him? 0. They showed up for themselves. It's what they believed about America that got them to travel on a bus for 8 hours to stand in the sun in Washington in the middle of August. It's what they believed, and it wasn't about black versus white. 25% of the audience was white. Dr. King believed that there are two types of laws in this world, those that are made by a higher authority and those that are made by man. And not until all the laws that are made by man are consistent with the laws that are made by the higher authority will we live in a just world. It just so happens that the civil rights movement was the perfect thing to help him bring his cause to life. We followed him not for him, but for ourselves. And by the way, he gave the I have a dream speech, not the I have a plan speech. Listen to politicians now with their comprehensive 12-point plans. They're not inspiring anybody. Because there are leaders and there are those who lead. Leaders hold a position of power or authority, but those who lead inspire us. Whether they're individuals or organizations, we follow those who lead not because we have to, but because we want to. We follow those who lead not for them, but for ourselves. And it's those who start with why that have the ability to inspire those around them or find others who inspire them. Thank you very much.
Wow. I just get goosebumps every time that I hear that. Let me just start up the presentation again, and we're going to take what Simon has shown us and we're going to actually try and figure out how do you as a photographer then approach defining what your why is. So let me just start that up now and we'll move on. So if you want to see that again, you'll see it on TED Talks. So to get back to the main point. So as Simon says, people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And just to recap on his golden circle, so you start with your why. So rather than looking at what you do and how you do it, if you discover your why first, then out of that comes your how and your what. And if all your communications and all your marketing and all your sales is built around the why first, and then the how, and then the when, that's the way that you can connect with people. So what is your business why? And why is knowing your why will that lead to success? And as Simon explained, it's because how we're wired, how our brain is wired. We connect with people's why, not their what, and not their how. Most businesses don't know their why, and therefore they don't use that to drive everything they do. Instead, they concentrate on communicating with their what and their how. So what is your business why? So recently, for those of you who are on 3XM Insiders, you'd see I posted a post about 7 or 8 days ago, which says, why are you in business? And we got some interesting answers to that. Some people said, I started the business to get away from my current job or my boss that I just didn't enjoy or didn't get on with. Some said that they wanted to find their independence, freedom, and have flexibility by working for yourself. Some said that they just want to take control of their own destiny and their own income. Others said, I'm just passionate about photography. I've always loved photography. I've always wanted to build a business around it, and that's why I got started. But some people gave a signal that there was a greater purpose, and those photographers probably understood their why. So let's get into some of that now. Once you understand your why, the next step is to find your story and your passion. And finding your story creates passion, and passion is contagious. People just love people who are passionate about what they do and why they do it. And that's the easiest way to sell. If you truly believe in what you do and why you do it, well, then you will connect with those people and those people will buy from you. So how would you go about this and what's the structure? So the first thing is, while this is just 4 simple steps, it's not something you will do in 4 or 5 minutes. It's something that you have to create first, then revisit over and over again. And it'll probably take a number of weeks or maybe even months just to get this to a position that you're absolutely happy with it. But your first question is, why are you doing photography as a business? And you start the answer with, because I. And then you finish out that sentence. And once you've done that, then you're ready to go to step 2. And step 2 is looking at the above answer and asking, why is that important to you? And at this stage, you're thinking. So you start with, because I think. And then the third step then is looking at that answer and then say, well, why are those things important to you? And you start those statements with your belief statements. And we heard Simon talking about, I believe. It's important that you believe. Martin Luther King went around and said, I believe, I believe. So you're at that stage now. You're creating the next part, which is why you believe the other statements. And then you get to the no stage. And the no stage is the final stage here. And you start saying, all those other statements is because I know. And when you've got that stage, you've figured out your personal why as to why you're in business. So let's focus on your client's why. So you've gone through the whole process. You now understand your why and you've figured all that out. So how do you translate that in then to your communications and your marketing? Well, first you've got to understand your client's why. So there's a number of steps here that we recommend, the 9-step process. So the first one is, I've watched Simon's video, I don't know, about 11 times at this stage. And every time I listen to it, I pick up something new and fresh. So it's important to watch that again. Then you make a list of your genres of photography that you offer right this moment or intending to offer. And then you put on your client's shoes and you look at those genres of photography and try and make a list of the results of that client interacting with your business and what do they get out of it? What's in it for them? And once you figure that out, you then say, so what are the whys that are important to that client? So now you're in your client's shoes and you're starting to understand what's important to them, but more importantly, why is it important to them? And then you take those whys when you've developed those out and you insert them into a why statement. Now, if you do multiple genres of photography, it's vital that you have a different why statement for each genre because the clients will be different, the results that they want will be different, and the whys they have for hiring you as a photographer for that particular genre will be different. And once you've done that, you then ask your question, but why? And you ask that why question again. So it's a second test of what those client why statements are saying. And then you repeat step 1 to 6 over and over and over again until it absolutely resonates with you. The next step then is to get some advice from somebody outside your business who's a close friend who you can trust and share your why with them and ask them what their opinion is and take their feedback. Then reflect on what they tell you, reflect on your why statements, revisit them. And when you know you have them absolutely right is when they just flow off your tongue. So the benefits of having a why, and Simon has summarized this of great businesses, but we're smaller businesses. Yeah, we're photography businesses, but the benefits are still the same. So it allows you to identify what photography services you're going to offer. When you get to the stage, or if you already have employees, what type of employee do you want to hire to help you build your business? What type of clients are you going to shoot? And how are you going to attract those types of clients with your marketing and your sales? So let's take an example. So here's an example of a photographer who probably hasn't quite worked out their why yet, and they're focused on the what and the how. So if you ask this photographer, what do you do? An answer might be, I do boudoir portraits and I have a great studio to capture great images. So you can see there that it's absolutely focused on the what they do, which is boudoir photography, and how they do it, that they have this wonderful studio to capture the images. But let's now look at an example of a photographer who's worked out their why. So their why is, I empower women who've been known and have been known to help them rekindle the passion in a loving relationship. See the connection there straight away, focused on the client. The how is, I do this by capturing images of women that make them feel special. These images can be just for themselves or for them to share with their partner. And the what, I provide a professional photography boudoir experience like no other. If you compare those two, which one do you think, if you were a woman who was interested in a boudoir shoot, or you're actually just trying to get them interested in the possibility of a boudoir shoot, would connect most with that client? So to recap, people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. So it would be unfair of me to ask you to see this without understanding what 3XM's why is. So we've gone through this process many a time and we will revisit it on many occasions. So our why is, 3XM's mission is to help photographers to create successful businesses. And from that why comes out our how. And our how is, we do that by developing products and software solutions, combined with a business, sales, and marketing education that enables photographers to sell more. So that's how we achieve our mission of helping photographers create successful businesses. And currently, the what of what we do to make all that happen is we sell presentation products that have been designed to facilitate a print viewing process, which we know is the best way for a photographer to maximize their sales opportunity. We also provide online gallery solutions which help photographers drive referrals. And this is the fastest way to grow your business, is via referrals. And we also offer the business and marketing educational content. We produce ebooks and webinars like this and online tools and shared learning in 3XM Insiders, our closed group, to help with that whole process. So you can see there that we understand our why. And our why is about helping photographers to have better businesses, because we know our business can only be as good as your business is. So here's a summary again of our why. So helping photographers to create successful businesses. And you'll see even on our website, our taglines there is your selling made simple. So even our taglines come back to our why, and everything from that why develops out. So before we finish, and we are nearly finished, I'd like to recommend to you to have a look at some of our other webinars. And we've some great recorded webinars, if you haven't seen them yet, on marketing to Generation C, the art of pricing, and a number of ebooks as well on how to increase your sales and on pricing too. So you can get that on our website on the info tab. Before you go, if you are interested in getting started with a print viewing and the folio box, we do samples at 25% off. So the code LOVEIT will get you 25% off your samples. If you are an existing customer, we thank you for your business. Without you, we couldn't do things like this. So the code WEBPPP for the next 24 hours will get you 15% off any live order you want to place. And finally, please, please, please join some 3XM Insiders. It's our closed group, and this group has been designed to help photographers create better businesses. And there's content in there, and it's about the community and people sharing their ideas and their thoughts. So we will, at the very end of the webinar, post a link in there. And finally, I just have to thank you for your time, for spending the time with us today. Please do tune in to Simon Sinek again. He's the absolute guru in this space. And in 2 weeks' time, our next webinar is going to be around goal setting. So how we approach our goals. We've done our why. How do we take that then and create some goals to build a better business? For those of you who are already customers, we thank you for your business, because we could not do events like this without your support as a customer. It was great to see you again, and I'll see you on the inside. Talk soon.